Good afternoon, everyone. This is Vivian, and welcome to today's webinar. Any questions can be submitted in the question section of your GoToWebinar control panel. And also, please answer all of the polling questions throughout the session and complete the survey in the follow-up email. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Scott McKeon with iPayables.
Hello. Okay. So is this good to go, Vivian? We ready to roll?
Yes, you can start now.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining, everybody. This is a pleasure for us to join this webinar, and we're grateful to IFO for this opportunity, and we hope to make it objective and educational and certainly insightful for each of you in your various roles in finance, and particularly in accounts payable. We hope to be able to demonstrate a little bit of knowledge and experience that we have. We have conversations regularly, daily, multiple conversations with many of you and your peers out there in accounts payable. And so we're hoping to be able to share a little bit about what we learn as we have these conversations. And we'll share a little bit about iPayables, but we want to keep it focused on what to do when you're in a situation where either you don't have an automation solution and you're trying to decide what direction to go, or more importantly, that you do have a solution and it's just not quite delivering to the results that you want, or maybe that you hear about others having. And in some cases, you may not have even known what you don't know. And so this might be an opportunity to highlight a few of those things. And we hope that you do so, and that you get a sense for our mission at iPayables is really to lift all people in the procure to pay process. And what that means is we seek to enhance people's lives. We want to make your life better. We want you to be more empowered, more efficient, more effective, smarter, stronger, faster, just always improving. It's what we espouse internally as a company and what we try to do with everybody we partner with, and frankly, everybody we have discussions with. We want you to be better today than you were yesterday, and seeking to be better tomorrow than you are today. So that's our vision and hope, and hopefully we can share some of that with you as we go along in this presentation. We'd love to make this as interactive as possible. There may be some parts where a question comes up, and Vivian will be able to give me the heads up where we can address it in the moment that it comes up. It might be best to do that. We've got a significant amount of material to work through, but you're who we really want to have understand. It's hard to do with a large forum and format with several people on, but to the extent that we can, we invite you to do so, and we will accommodate to the best that we can as well. So we will start with, you can see the agenda slide, and let me know if I'm looking at the wrong screen here, but hopefully you see an agenda slide. And what we'd like to do is to frame up the context of what different solutions are even out there. We want to give you an idea for probably the most common that we see come up that different groups have utilized. And we'll share a little bit about the benefits of those and give you an understanding of what that looks like, the context. And then we want to kind of deep dive into each of the different solutions that we see most commonly, and explain why there's some shortfalls in each one of those, some of the challenges, and even how to tell if you have a problem. Certainly there's things that you know and you experience, but we want to be able to highlight how to even know, and then what to do once you've identified that. How do you improve the solution that you have in place? And we'll talk a lot about how to actually prepare for change. And you'll see a common theme: change management is the greatest opportunity, and in many cases it's the greatest challenge. And so we advocate for really helping your team to understand and prepare to make those changes, and have the faith to reap the benefits through those efforts and the work required to automate. We'll share a little bit about what we've learned over the course of decades and continue to learn. As we mentioned, every day we strive to be better. So we'll share a little bit about iPayables and our take on some of these different solutions, and how what we feel we've probably brought the best of all worlds to make it the best offering possible. But again, it's always a striving effort. So we will continue to research and to develop and to get better and better to help serve you, our customers and constituents. So we'll at the end, we'll do a little review and recap along with some dedicated time for questions and answers. So feel free to take notes and again, interrupt if something comes up pressing. Otherwise, just make a note of it and we'll address it at the end. So first off, an overview of the various options that are available. Now, there's a lot of different directions that a group can go in when they want to improve. We just kind of summarize what we most often see, and we put it into 4 buckets, and they're progressive in scope and reach. You see, first one is outsourcing, probably the most immediate, perhaps maybe the most easiest to implement, and certainly has benefits and drives results. As you move up the scale, it gets a little more challenging, but certainly significantly more benefits to your organization. OCR, optical character recognition. You've obviously, most of you have probably heard that. Some of you may be even utilizing that. There's tremendous benefits there, and we'll discuss those. The hybrid is what we call maybe the best of both worlds, and that may be new to you of what you've heard, but we'll describe that in detail. And then supplier portals. This is something you've heard about. There's some I guess good narratives about that, and maybe not as good. And so we'll address those and help you to understand. But what we thought might help is to frame it up in the context of an actual organization. So if you've got a pen and paper and you want to write some of these metrics down, this might help really frame up what we're looking to help you understand. So if we were to say that there's a given organization that company XYZ, and they've got an accounts payable team, and we'll call it a team of 12. You got a manager and a supervisor and 10 data entry clerks. And this organization processes about 10,000 invoices a month, give or take. All manual. They have a series of choices to get better. And we'll talk through each one of these in that context to help you see what the benefits are of each of those, and maybe what it translates to into a couple key metrics that we're going to talk about throughout this presentation. The first is cost per invoice. This is what typically executives will look at. What is the cost per invoice for processing today? And then if I go with a given solution, what does that translate to? A key metric, but not the most important. What we want to frame up to you is the most important is straight through processing. Might be a new phrase to some of you. Hopefully some of you have heard of this. This is something we talk about all the time as we meet with people. How efficient is your organization? How much straight through processing are you experiencing with your given strategy for automation? So if today, let's say it's 10,000 invoices, you got a team of 12, we'll focus on the 10 data entry clerks because that's where we want to improve. Let's assume that it's maybe a $10 per invoice metric. CFO, controller, this is kind of what they'll be looking at, head of finance. What are we spending to be able to process this key business function? The first step now, and so that's the metric for price per invoice, we'll call it, or cost per invoice is $10. And straight through processing today for that XYZ organization is 0% straight through, meaning every invoice that comes in is touched by somebody. It's part of the process. So this organization may look at outsourcing first, and we'll talk about what that is and the benefits of that. So you've heard probably BPOs, business process outsourcing organizations. Typically, they're in other countries that have labor at a lower cost. And the benefit there is you get to reduce your cost per invoice. And it's pretty straightforward and it's pretty immediate. And so you could probably go, again, depending on who you partnered with for that function, you could maybe see that $10 per invoice in call it a $6 or $7 per invoice. You get immediate reduction, but your straight through processing hasn't changed. There's still people touching every single invoice. They're just less costly people. And you probably still have those 10 clerks. They just happen to be in a different country. There are some drawbacks to that, and we'll talk about that. But just as a first step, that's something to consider. If an organization wants to be a little more technical and take on a challenge of an OCR opportunity, this would be where OCR, optical character recognition, this is where you would bring on to your organization a software solution that will read the PDF files that you would take. So your invoices come in how they normally come in, they're still paper, but you will be able to have this technology, be it through templates that you set up or artificial intelligence that you have in place. It'll be able to read what's on that PDF. So it'll recognize those characters. And the benefit there is that you've additionally reduced your cost per invoice beyond what outsourcing can do. And you've moved away from this 100% manual. You've now adopted technology. You've moved away from manual file storage, making it easier to search and to archive. And you've kind of moved into that world of higher tech. And this is where most organizations, when they wanted to really pursue a true automation source, kind of went in this direction. Your cost per invoice is going to be, and I'll caveat this, we'll talk about it more a little later, but it'll come down below outsourcing, but you're going to be in that, $3 or $5 per invoice, and you may hesitate because some of you may have OCR and you're like, well, I can get that for 50 cents an invoice. Well, that's maybe for the software, but you're going to see there are some complexities that come to be able to fully implement an OCR solution, and then to be able to manage and navigate that. So you're probably going to be in that, call it $4 or $5 range, and your clerks went from maybe the 10 initial clerks to probably half. You're still going to have some errors and some exceptions. Then you'll need people to work those out. You'll need to be able to work some of those templates or the AI that's involved with the OCR. But you've improved straight through processing. In outsourcing, that significant metric didn't change. You went from 0 to 0. Now with OCR, you've got some invoices you're going to set up that they're going to come through straight through, and it'll be great. You're probably in that 40 to 50% straight through processing. The next we call it a little bit of a hybrid. This is where your company partners with a solution provider that's going to offer both the technology components, but also some data input from human indexers. So it's combining the two. You get basically that benefit is you're transitioning that AP knowledge that your team has into a documented, codified solution that's going to utilize OCR-like technology to pull a significant amount of data that's kind of easily ready to capture. Things like a purchase order or the vendor name or the contact information. So that data can come in much more quickly than actually keying it in. And then it incorporates a human element in that digitization process to be able to capture the variable data that comes in with an invoice. And suppliers are as different as can be, as are their invoices. And so being able to have that human element just gives you the highest accuracy possible. Now you're probably, you're still going to have some exceptions. You're going to have some challenges. There's challenges in working out. We're going to talk in detail about that, but getting that tribal knowledge transitioned into that application or that solution, that's an effort in and of itself. And then, just even monitoring it with new suppliers coming in and out, you're probably, let's say our clerks came from 10 down to now maybe 3, and you're straight through processing much higher. You're probably in that 60 to 70% straight through processing, where you're only touching the more challenging invoices. And then finally, supplier portals. Now, this is where your company would partner with a solution and service provider that will offer you a robust supplier portal along with some professional resources and support to be able to onboard suppliers and help them to have the best self-service invoicing experience possible. Lots of benefits here. Some challenges to get there, and we'll talk about those, but the benefits really, you are now fully maximizing your cost per invoice and your straight through processing. This is best in class. you are probably getting to where there's no data entry needed. So you've eliminated all manual entry. No need for those AP clerks, and your straight through processing is 90% plus. highly engaged, highly robust. You've got technology with upfront PO matching, PO flips, dispute resolution, status inquiry, and more. Suppliers have full visibility into the status of their invoice, so they don't need to be calling AP asking, you know, where's my invoice? How come it's delayed? How come it's missing? That upfront matching allows for a collapse of, you know, that gap between the buyer and the supplier. It really kind of removes that need for a middleman. It gives that self-service experience that drives quick invoicing and very inexpensive. So you heard the benefits of each of the four. Now what we'd like to do is kind of deep dive into a little bit of the drawbacks to each one. Where do we see some concerns, and how to get over those when you experience them. So with outsourcing, again, we mentioned it's probably one of the quickest and maybe easiest way to get off of that $10 per invoice that you're spending currently. But in reality, it's not automation. And in some cases, it's not even really disguised as automation, because there is a real effort to, you know, be able to communicate. The AP team is having to really just, and it's kind of an extension of their team, and you're getting lower costs, but there's a real loss of control. In a lot of cases, you're in different, significantly different time zones. You're in a global situation now, and you know the visibility into what's happening with invoicing isn't quite there. You hope that it's being sent by suppliers, and you hope that it comes through, but you're not quite sure of when and where and what's happening. And you know, there's some real concerns. I mean, this is something that we ran into when COVID-19 hit. We saw a real surge in demand on our end because of that exposure, where organizations just, their invoicing stopped and they had a real disruption to business continuity. And so this is something to be careful of. For those of you who are currently outsourced, this is, you know, I'm sure you've experienced these drawbacks, and you know, it's important to see that there are better ways, that automation is different from outsourcing. And you want to get rid of that paper, but you also want to keep that control. So the next one to consider is optical character recognition. This great technology, and you've made that leap from either outsourcing if you have it and you're moving into OCR, or you've just decided to go straight into OCR. There are tremendous benefits here. We discussed some of those, but the drawbacks are it is still paper-based. What you're doing is a workaround. You're trying to bring in technology and work around this idea of actually being able to work through a paper or PDF invoice. And this can be a challenge. The technology is not perfect, and in some cases it's not even great. You've got templates that you're working to set up that in some cases for larger steady suppliers can, you know, it's a process to get it up, but that can benefit, and you can kind of have that established. But we each know that suppliers move in and out, up and around, and as do suppliers' invoices. So being able to get your arms around the myriad small invoices that can come in from small suppliers can be a real challenge. And trying to set up templates or get sufficient AI to cover those disparate invoices just really kind of makes it a challenge. So the image quality also can be difficult. As you know, varying invoices can make that tough to actually see what's happening. And so a lot of that workload, as we mentioned, you may get to where you're optimizing 40-50% straight through, but that other 50% can be a challenge, and it almost in some cases makes it, you wonder why you're even running it through that, because you're now correcting errors, which maybe if you'd have just straight keyed the data, it could go faster. So adopting is a challenge, and oftentimes it brings in personnel with a higher technology experience and ability. So you might see some shift in AP costs as it relates to a cost per invoice. But the important thing, and you'll hear us mention this a few times, the important thing is to be honest with yourself and to be able to know, are we truly straight through? have we really reduced our expenses and improved our efficiencies? Oftentimes it just pulls in IT a little too much and can be a challenge here. As we move on to the hybrid, the sort of best of both worlds, it's easier said than done to say, well, why don't we use the technology and people so we don't have to use as much of each. It's a challenge, no doubt, and it can be difficult to handle some of those invoices that are challenging. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to put some processes into guidelines and a solution that then anybody can follow. Even somebody off the street could follow a guideline and be able to get you that invoice quickly and easily, and that way you can keep that human element strong but cost effective. So there's a front lift to be able to get that knowledge into the application, and frankly, just as we mentioned, varying suppliers have varying types of invoices, and it can be sometimes just a real challenge to codify complex invoices. And so it makes for an AP experience that's a little bit unique. Typically, accounts payable has a stack of invoices, and let's say that those 10 clerks processing those 10,000 invoices split it out to 1,000 each, and that's their month. 70–80% of that is fairly straightforward. They key it in, they get a sense of satisfaction, of completion, and they're excited about getting stuff done. Maybe they're not as excited about the manual effort, and they know there's probably better ways. So in that case, it may be a little bit of a challenge, but as part of their day-to-day job, they get it done, and then they might mix it in with handling those 20–30% others that are more challenging. What happens is we mentioned, we're going down from 10 clerks down to 3 with this hybrid approach, but that experience is significantly different. They are now, those 3 are working on codifying, setting things up. They're handling the most difficult invoices, and that's kind of all they're doing. And so it makes for just a different experience that's important to recognize the challenges that can come there. So let's pause for a minute here and just ask this question. And there's a poll open that Vivian just set up. So if you could input your answer to this question: what is one of the principal drawbacks to using OCR? A, it's too expensive. B, too many errors and exceptions. Or C, difficult to search and archive invoices. So go ahead and put your poll in there. Vivian, do we want to address and answer this, or should we come back after we've gone through the other material?
I'm going to go ahead and give everyone about 10 more seconds to answer, and then I'm going to close it and we'll launch the results.
Good, perfect.
Okay, so we have 21% that selected too expensive, 70% that selected too many errors and exceptions, and 8% selected difficult to search and archive invoices.
Okay, great. Can we share the answer and talk about why?
I actually did just share the results. Would you like me to share? Oh,
No, I'm going to talk about what the right answer is and then why. Is that okay now, or do you want to wait?
Oh, go ahead and do that. That's fine.
Good.
Yep.
Good. I think it'll be helpful, especially because you just now answered it. The first one was a little bit deceptive. To say that it's too expensive, it's actually not, and there's deception in that. OCR is one of the least expensive ways to automate, and as you're evaluating it, it can really be an apple to an orange. And it's important to recognize that when you're looking at different automated solutions, you need to know there are going to be, the correct answer is B, too many exceptions and errors. There's a lot of work that still need to be done, not just in setting up the templates or the AI to get it to capture those characters, but those errors make it a challenge. So oftentimes that can look like to an executive, hey, why don't we go with this? It's the best, cheapest solution. Careful of that. So that's we wanted to maybe highlight for that for you. But it's the visibility is still a challenge, and we've heard that. OCR solutions vary. There's several solution providers out there, and some are great, some not as much. But we have heard a reverberating theme that there is, while that's not the most principal reason, there is some challenge to that. It's better than manual for sure, but there's still some challenge to visibility. So good. Okay, let's move on. So now, sharing a little bit about portals, supplier portals. This is, this one is, if it were as easy as it might sound, everybody would be doing it. And we can tell you, not everybody is doing it and doing it to the best maximized way possible. And there's some reasons for that. Supplier portals, it is, as you think about it, it's the way of the future. Everything you see, from what we used to do and pull into gas stations and have somebody fill up our gas tank, we now self-service. We used to stand in line at the airport and get our tickets. We now do that online or at kiosks just outside. Even restaurants, and there's a lot of self-service that's happening. And the reason is it's actually better for all stakeholders. Quicker, more efficient, cost-effective, and just makes for an overall better experience. We know that, but supplier portals have taken a little bit of a hit, mostly because the lack of understanding on how to make it successful. A lot of ERPs out there will say, hey, look, we are your ERP, and check out our new supplier portal that we just put together. And it may be good. They may have the tools and the technology there, but that adoption, that understanding, there's some challenges there. AP teams and suppliers are just not as familiar with it. It's a change to a process that has been in place forever. And AP is one of those things that, there's a lot of things in a company that are broke that need fixing. AP, even manual, if it's not broke, why fix it? And it can fall to the bottom of the totem pole a little bit. But it's important to see that if you really understand and you can really engage with some of those organizations that are best in class, you can overcome these challenges. There are early on and still even today in some cases, organizations will charge suppliers. So now suppliers are being asked to do something completely different and pay for it and not quite have the technical support or understanding to be able to be successful. And so it just makes for an experience that doesn't quite meet what it was packaged up to be. So there's really, onboarding suppliers is part of the experience. We had one of the saddest conversations was meeting a group, a public organization that had put a lot of resources into this really fancy portal, and called us and said, well, how do you make it work? And we'll address this a little bit later on, but it was a challenge to hear that they bought the technology but didn't have that onboarding support and engagement throughout that experience to help really make it as effective as possible. So this is what stands out, and we would say, and this is something to consider. Certainly, AP teams and suppliers are not as familiar with it. Often, what we find is that an executive might embrace it and say, "Look, this is great. We want to maximize our straight through, and we want to minimize our cost per invoice. This is terrific. Let's do it." And then that's about as far as they go. And then they wonder why did their team not deliver what was supposed to be delivered. What we advocate for is a holistic understanding, everybody coming together and getting on the same page with not only what's expected and needs to get done, but how it needs to get done. And that really requires executive sponsorship and support. The CFO should be fully engaged in this and back it as well. Even everybody in accounts payable, in purchasing, what you're basically setting up is a firewall to help the suppliers help themselves. And I share that with all genuineness and sincerity. They are better off once they're through that experience. Nobody likes to do something different, especially when they're trying to run their own business, supply products or services to you, and then invoice you. That is the core to their business. Any disruption in that makes it a challenge. So they don't love doing this. Change management is important, but it is better for them. And we'll share an anecdote a little bit later, but it is better for them. And what you need here is for a CFO, even CEO, to say, this is what we're doing as part of our core business process improvement. Everybody's on board. And when the supplier tries to find a way out to still send paper or not have to change, they need to know whoever they call, everybody's on the same page. Arms are locked. And this is what we're doing. And trust us, you'll be better for it. And to the extent that you have somebody helping you, meaning the organization that's also providing the technology, providing that support to onboard and to get through that change management is critical to success. So to frame up the overall rollout issues, we talked about some of these four core solutions that people go to when they're moving from manual. There's one of the biggest setbacks, even to exploring it, is actually this idea of change management, and it happens really in the trenches, right there with accounts payable. Change is not easy. We had a conversation with one group that was, everybody had decided, and then we were kind of moving down the chain, and we got to a clerk who said, "I've been doing accounts payable for 35 years. I've never processed and approved an invoice that I couldn't see, touch, and feel." We were trying to explain this concept of an electronic invoice where the supplier really just put in their PO number to the application. All the data flipped from their ERP and came on, and they were able to see that, simply hit approve and match to that PO that flipped, and it goes straight through. It's an electronic invoice, fully auditable, and done and ready to go. Straight through, nobody needs to touch it, you just pay it. Getting their arms around that was just almost too much. So we really advocate that before you even go down the road, you get everybody on board to kind of see, hey, look, we're going to do something different and something better. Let's all get on board and all get on the same page here. And clearly, we're going to talk about this in a second too. The helping to support those who are actually involved in making this change. A lot of times it's hey, help us automate, AP manager or whoever the director is, and then good luck. That can be a real backfire. They want to know that the team is going to be okay. There's a plan. There's things that are in place. There's higher value tasks that the team can do that will benefit the organization, moving them from a cost center to maybe even a profit center as they pursue discounts or engage more with purchasing or suppliers. So it's something to be careful of and to address, but this is one of the key challenges here. So we got a question here. Let's take a moment. Let's do a poll. We're going to ask a question around supplier portals, and this might hopefully help overcome some of the negative narrative on supplier portals. But what is one of the main reasons supplier portals fail to succeed? A, too technical for suppliers to understand. B, AP team double checking everything for accuracy. C, executive sponsorship and support. D, suppliers don't like portals.
Everyone has around 10 more seconds. Okay, so 23% selected too technical for suppliers to understand, 18% selected AP team double checking everything for accuracy, 45% selected executive sponsorship and support, and 13% selected suppliers don't like portals.
Okay, good. So you might often hear the suppliers don't like portals. We found, and we've run surveys with our suppliers, our customer suppliers. They don't like it when they don't know. Just like none of us like something that we don't know anything about. And something that sounds like technical when we're not technical is a roadblock. And so it's interesting to do surveys once people are in the water swimming and it's warm. They're like, wow, okay, yeah, didn't love diving in because I didn't know what it was like, but now I'm in and I like it. And in a lot of cases, they love it. We ran a supplier survey and had an overwhelming response. Just one simple question was, how easy is it to use the supplier portal? And it was a full majority that said easy to use, self-explanatory, and they not only do they not like it, but they actually love it. We had 90% plus who said we would much prefer having the tools and technology to be able to work out exceptions to our invoice or to the PO or to anything before anybody else. And if we can do that and make it faster for us to get paid, we're all about it. So those two are not necessarily the case. They may seem, and they may be part of the narrative. One of the things that I probably didn't emphasize enough was the AP team double checking everything for accuracy. This actually is a contributing factor. It's probably not the main reason, but it is a contributing factor where you really want to, when you're going to explore a portal, you want to make sure there's enough time in the testing and configuring to make sure everybody's on board, the process flow is working, and people are confident before you even launch and go live. That will really help you to be able to succeed. So the answer is executive sponsorship and support is one of the key reasons that it fails to be able to be successful. And that's not necessarily executive sponsorship at a given point in time. Typically, we always get it at the beginning. It's just gotta maintain through the project, through go live, through stabilization, and going forward, that everybody gets on board and helps make a successful transition. Okay, so let's move into how to tell if you actually have a problem. Now there's a lot of questions that you can ask, and you see several of them right here. We don't need to read each one of them out. But the question you don't see here that we want to highlight is, are you really being honest with your situation? And this is something we all grapple with in all phases of our lives. Are we really self-assessing to the extent that we can self-regulate that would drive change and improvement? And asking yourself that question, are we really being honest with our price per invoice? Have we reduced headcount to the extent that it makes sense for our business? Do we have opportunities for more visibility, more control, less time, increased discounts? Now, where are we at? And then understanding, we're gonna go through this here for the last part of our webinar here, is the solution the right size? Do I have the right fit? If I've got 1,000 invoices and I'm looking for an enterprise solution, is that necessary? Do I need to go through a supplier portal and get those full maximum benefits if I'm only processing several hundred invoices a month? Now, contrary to what you may think, we actually have several partners who do this, and one in particular, they had about 600 invoices a month and one AP clerk who was retiring. And the CFO said, look, I want to explore to see if there's a better way. As they went through that process, there was a lot of hesitancy. When we first had initial discussions about the supplier portal, it was like, nah, that's a non-starter. We just don't think our suppliers would change and do that. But here was the difference. What they did was they got on some reference calls. And as they heard from others how to actually make it work, and when they heard the experience, they were all in. So they have 600 invoices a month coming in, fully 100% through the portal. and they're successful. And what they did was, again, executive sponsorship, and they brought everybody on board. Discussions and webinars like this with suppliers to help them understand the change management, and internally to get everybody on the same page. And it wasn't nearly as daunting or challenging as they initially thought, and they have a great experience doing it. So what we see more often than that is, rather than larger or smaller companies looking at bigger solutions, we see the opposite, where there's a lot of large enterprise organizations who, for whatever reason, maybe early on in the process, or as they grew, they didn't necessarily look at changing solutions. And so now they're in that 5, 7, 10,000 invoices a month with a solution that's not quite matching, and there's opportunities to be able to improve. So we want to just go through a couple of these and point out, you know, how to make this more effective. It's important to understand what best in class is, and you can see in the middle here this percentages of invoices processed straight through. Again, that's the core metric. That's where you really want to focus your time and attention. This is a third-party study that was done to kind of look at most AP departments out there. What is their price per invoice or cost per invoice? How long does it take to process, et cetera, compared to those who are utilizing as much automation as possible in their solution and linking invoices to purchase orders and moving towards more electronic supplier portal type invoicing and gaining that full straight through process experience. So let's take this moment and we just shared this. Hopefully you can catch this. We want to say what is one of the best questions to ask to assess your solution to success. So you've got several questions here, and they're all good. But and maybe it's a little bit of a trick question, but what is the best question to ask yourself?
Everyone has about 10 more seconds. Okay, so 49% selected, are we being honest about our numbers? 7% said, have we increased discounts? 18% selected, are we best in class? And 26% selected, are our employees on board?
Good. What we share is the answer is A, but really it's E, all of the above is not something we put in, but these are questions to ask yourself. But being honest will really help you to be able to move forward, and being honest as an organization. So now what to do as we're honest and as we look around and move forward, how do we improve where we're currently at? Now, outsourcing, as we mentioned, is pretty straightforward. And really the way to improve where you're at with outsourcing is probably just to look more towards automation than outsourcing. There is a better way. You may feel like, look, we set that up and we put in that work and effort. We're not sure that there's much, the work or effort to automate might not be as worth it with the cost savings. There's more than just cost savings. We mentioned control and visibility, not just for you, but for your stakeholders, your suppliers. So we really recommend if this is where you're at, look for ways to move up and to improve. For OCR, there are a lot of organizations out there that have done a good job, and they've been able to get IT on board, and they have these templates set up, and they have a system whereby as new suppliers come on board, they can quickly adopt them to a given template. And there's continuing and ongoing improvements in artificial intelligence. This is something we as an organization are dedicated to in research and development, getting better and utilizing technology to the extent possible, and being able to be supplier centric, where we don't necessarily have to change anything about our suppliers. We've got technology and tools in place that can work almost as well. Today, that's not the case. We are furiously working towards that, but you may be able to consider further automation and reduce some of those IT costs that are engaged there. Certainly, if your straight through processing is less than ideal, you want to be able to take a closer look at that. There is some functionality that can really benefit you if you move further into that higher level of automation. And so we strongly advocate for that. And this hybrid solution, it certainly is and can be the best of both of those worlds, where you can get your speed and cost reduction without having to sacrifice the accuracy. And there's different solution providers out there. This happens to be one that we offer as well for those that aren't quite fully ready to do that 100% like that 600 invoice a month company. But this can work well when you train your team and you get focused on getting strong guidelines that come in, and you can be able to document and codify that tribal knowledge that exists. You really empower yourselves to be in a strong position, and using error flagging to further reduce, and having the solution and technology to be able to react and interact when an exception comes in. You can quickly learn why and adjust accordingly, so that rather than putting that time and effort into OCR templates, you're putting it into this hybrid solution that is scalable and sustainable going forward. So one step we encourage, though, is with the hybrid is really working to engage the supplier portal. Get that crawl, walk, run experience, and as you're moving towards run, we mentioned those 30% that can be tough to get, and that the team has to work through that. That's where you can really engage with suppliers and move up to the next level with the robust supplier portal that can really benefit the overall experience. And as we mentioned, make it mandated, and you'll be shocked. We do an annual user conference for all of our partners in automation, and we had one group share that they did it in phases. And so they had some suppliers that were invoicing to certain regions in one way with the portal, and to other regions in the old way. And once they had made that change and could kind of see the light, they were on board, and it gave this company enough confidence to say, oh, you know what? Vendors were concerned at first, and now they love it. Let's go all in. And they shared at our user conference. They said, look, we just decided if you're going to send us a piece of paper or PDF, we're going to charge you $3 to process it. Otherwise, it's free to use the portal. Come on in. We've got our partner that can reach out and help you if you're concerned or have questions. And it's a terrific experience for them and for their stakeholders. So straight through processing is definitely something you want to have, and you want to have a best-in-class solution that provides the right tools and technology that gives you that dispute resolution, the status inquiry, upfront PO matching. A lot of the ERPs will provide a portal, but they don't quite have the reach and breadth that others that have been out there for a long time can actually have. And make sure everybody's on board. That accounts payable isn't, you have a strong integration to where you're not feeling some of the effects of not trusting the system and making it not be able to work the way you possibly could. So let's skip through this one. Rather than pulling this, I'll just share the answer so we can hit these last couple slides and open up for question and answer. But I'll just give you the answer here. The best way to measure accounts payable efficiency is really C, that's straight through processing. Cost per invoice is part of the discussion, and it's something executives will ask about. But remind them, feel free to share them. We are happy to share as well. But what extent are you putting those invoices straight through without actually having to touch or work exceptions? That's the key metric you want to focus on. So one more slide, we'll share how a little bit about iPayables, and then a quick recap, and then we should be done or open for questions here. But this is something we just wanted to end with. It's actually something maybe we should even start with, but it's important to prepare your team. Have a plan in place, and a plan that's going to reward your team, reward your champion, to say, hey, we are going to get better. We are best in class. We believe in lift. We want to make this thing happen and happen successfully. So the free time that frees you up, you're going to do higher value add tasks. And we are happy to share that with you, with what our partners in automation do. But there are several things that AP works so closely with purchasing anyways, and with suppliers anyways. You can see fraud prevention, audits, discounts. We've got groups who fully dedicate to partnering with purchasing, and through our dynamic discounting solution, they drive tremendous results and they become a true profit center for the organization. This is just what we do, and we'll keep this real brief, but we focus on the supplier portals. This is our bread and butter. It's in our DNA. Technology is what really drives the most value, and we recognize that that's just not going to happen by itself. So we provide, along with the software, we provide a service that is second to none. It is a white glove, boutique, high-end service to help suppliers get comfortable. More importantly, to help organizations internally get comfortable. And what we did to be able to bring a holistic experience was we actually created this hybrid automation piece as well that helps basically onboard groups where they can get comfortable with the data capture, have the best of both worlds while they move towards utilizing the supplier portal. And so it's a journey, and but it's a strong experience that we advocate for. And we're not the only ones who provide this, but we feel confident in what we do and in our enterprise reach and flexibility and the strong solution, being able to really drive a configurable solution that works to your business needs, and something that's compliant and able to really have the business continuity that keeps you and your team protected, keeps your data protected, and helps you to really be successful. So in recap, the four that we talked about, some pluses and minuses to each one of them, but if your solution isn't working and you're outsourcing, upgrade to something new. With OCR, consider a supplier portal, and it doesn't need to be mutually exclusive. You could still have OCR and then bring in a supplier portal to help some of the extras. A hybrid solution, we encourage you to learn more about what that means and how that can really drive cost reduction and improve the overall experience. And then a supplier portal can really round things out and put you in that best-in-class situation. And really, we advocate for you to be honest, self-assess, look at your own straight-through processing percentage. It's a simple number to count. How many invoices come in and how many do we touch? You can run that math on a daily, weekly, monthly basis and look at where you're at and how you want to improve. So with that, we are done. I don't know if we're out of time, Vivian, or do we have some time for questions? Anything that has come to your attention?
Hi, so I have a couple of questions here. So what really differentiates OCR from hybrid automation?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good question. And it's one of the things that creates so much confusion because there are humans involved. Even the mention of the hybrid, it sounds like outsourcing. And so people who are committed to technology say, well, wait a second, what hybrid seems like outsourcing. The reality is it's utilizing, whereas OCR is working internally to get templates or data tracking in place. It's allowing a service provider that can do that externally, not outsourced, but externally, and partner with your organization to set up strong guidelines that will, in a sense, mirror some of those template type things you've done with OCR. So it really is the best of both worlds. I don't know if that's fully answering that question, but feel free to ask further if that didn't quite handle it.
Okay, and the next question is, what is the best way to onboard suppliers onto a portal?
Great question. That's actually the core crux question, because it is. You've heard the executive sponsorship internally, but really having a group that knows how to do it. Somebody that this isn't their first rodeo, and you feel free to ask them as you're exploring and you're talking to different groups about portals. Ask, how successful are you? How many of the suppliers that utilize your system are in the portal actively invoicing? It's a question that might make them a little bit uncomfortable, but ask them that. And one of the things that we do is we'll run a vendor match. So we'll take a a company's vendor list, we'll run a match and we'll say, okay, look, we've got 30–40% of these vendors already actively invoicing in our portal. Well, that's where we'll start. And oftentimes, one of the things I probably didn't clarify is the portal isn't just somebody, a supplier going in and keying in info. It's robust enough to have file upload whereby, you may have 20% of your suppliers are actually big suppliers delivering 80% of your invoices. And that's some low-hanging fruit where if you're buying office supplies from Staples, well, that's a group that we can connect with. We're already engaged. They do file upload within our system. Our IT connects with their IT, and the data comes from their system through us into your system. So we knock out a lot of that just straight from file upload. And then, we do a series of trainings and outreach to suppliers continually. It's not, we have a deep and thorough integration process with the technology, but also outreach and rollout with the program. And it doesn't stop when go live kicks off. In fact, in many cases, that's when it starts. And we are continuing to reach out to suppliers. We do various campaigns where we help them, even if they're not in the portal today and they're sending us paper or PDF to our digitization team, our hybrid team. We'll reach out and say, hey, look, we know you're sending invoices paper today, but if you want to see the status, go ahead and click here. And they can click on and see, oh, cool, my invoice has been paid. I don't need to call and track it down. And it's just a way to kind of softly onboard them and get them more and more comfortable with the idea of technology and invoicing differently.
Okay, well, if there are no additional questions, we will bring today's webinar to an end. Thank you, Scott, so much for your presentation, and thank you all who attended. Please
Excellent.
remember to complete the survey in the follow-up email.
Thank you all. Thank you, Vivian. We appreciate it.
Nope.